Good afternoon, students. I am Riya Sinha, your assistant teacher. Today we are going to continue 5 of history, that is, what books and burials tell us. First of all, I would like to discuss with you all the meaning of burials. Burials means a place where dead bodies and remains of it are buried. In this chapter, we are going to study what archaeologists used to find from books and burials, what information they used to give us from all these type of contents. Here, first topic is given, one of the oldest books in the world. Now, in this topic, we will find out which is the oldest book in the world. So, let's see that. As you all have heard about Vedas, there are 4 of them. You all have to learn these names: the Rig Ved, Sam Ved, Yajur Ved and Athar Ved. Among 4 of them, the oldest Veda is the Rig Ved, which was composed about 3500 years ago. The Rig Ved includes more than 1000 hymns called Sukta or well said. These hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. 3 gods are especially important. First one is Agni, the god of fire. Second is Indra, a warrior god. And third is Soma, a plant from which a special drink was prepared. So, in this paragraph, till now we have studied that we are having 4 Vedas, and the oldest among them is Rig Ved, which was composed about 3500 years ago. It includes more than 1000 hymns called Sukta or well said. These hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. And 3 gods are especially important among them. First is Agni, the god of fire. Second is Indra, a warrior god. And third is Soma. These hymns were composed by sages. Priests taught students to recite and memorize each syllable, word and sentence bit by bit with great care. Most of these hymns were composed, taught and learnt by men only. Women were not used to compose hymns at that time. Very few were composed by women. The Rig Ved is in Old or Vedic Sanskrit, which is different from the Sanskrit which we used to learn today. See, a topic is given here, Sanskrit and other languages. Sanskrit is a part of family of languages known as Indo-European. Some Indian languages such as Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri and Sindhi are Indian languages. Some Asian languages are Persian, and many European languages such as English, French, German, Greek, Italian and Spanish belong to this family. They are called a family because they originally had words in common. Like, for example, take the words Matra in Sanskrit, Ma in Hindi and Mother in English. So, other languages used in the subcontinent belong to different families. For instance, those used in the northeast belong to Tibeto-Burman family. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam belong to the Dravidian family. And the languages spoken in Jharkhand and parts of central India belong to Austro-Asiatic family. You all have to learn these things, the origin of all the languages, from which family they particularly belong to. Now see, the books we use are written and printed. Today, whatever books we are using, these all are written and in printed form we are having it. The Rig Ved was recited and heard rather than read. It was written down several centuries after it was first composed and printed less than 200 years ago. Around 200 years ago it was printed when it was first composed after that. Now, how historians study the Rig Veda? Historians, like archaeologists, find out about the past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. Some of the hymns in the Rig Veda are in the form of dialogues, which is part of one such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra, sage means Rishi, named Vishwamitra, and two rivers, Byas and Satluj, who were worshipped as goddesses, given in your book in page number 37. You all can read it from there. So, some of the hymns were in the form of dialogues also in Rig Veda. Now see next topic, cattle, horses and chariots. There are many prayers in the Rig Veda for cattle, children and horses. And especially if we are talking about children, then especially for sons, some of the prayers are there. Horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battles which were fought to capture cattle. Battles were also fought for land, which was important for pasture and for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, such as barley. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people. Here we have learnt about several reasons why battles were fought at that time. So battles were fought for land, which was important for pasture and for growing crops. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people. Some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders, some was given to the priest and the rest was distributed among the people. Some of the wealth was for the performance of yajna or sacrifices in which offerings were made. We also used to do yajna in Hindu dharma, in Hindu religion. We used to sacrifice something to the god, whichever god we used to worship. So these were meant for god and goddesses only, and offerings could include anything, whether it is ghee, grain, and in some cases animals also. Most men took part in these wars. There was no regular army, but there were assemblies where people met and discussed matters of war and peace. They also chose leaders who were often brave and skillful warriors. So mainly men used to take parts in wars, and there was no regular army at that time, but people met and discussed matters of war and peace. Those who were brave and skillful, among one of them, they became their leaders. Okay, now see the next topic, words to describe people. There are several ways of describing people in terms of the work they do, the language they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities, and cultural practices. Some of the words used to describe people found in the Rig Veda also. There are two groups who are described in terms of their work. First is the priest, and sometimes called Brahmins, who performed various rituals, and Rajas. So here we are talking about two terms. First is Brahmins, the priest who used to perform rituals, and the second term is Rajas. These Rajas were not like the ones you will be learning about later, who is having kingdom and everything. They did not have capital cities, palaces or army, nor did they collect taxes. Generally, sons did not automatically succeed fathers as Rajas. So two words were used to describe the people or the community as a whole. One was the word Jan, which we still use in Hindi and other languages, and the other was Vish. The word Vaishya comes from Vish. Several Vish or Jan are mentioned by name, so we find reference to the Puru Jan or Vish, the Bharat Jan or Vish, Yadu Jan or Vish, and so on. So here two important words we are describing, which used to describe the whole community at that time. First one is Jan and the second one is Vish. and further it was improvised as Vashya. And several Vish or Jan are mentioned by name like Purujan, Bharatjan and Yadujan. Sometimes the people who composed the hymns described themselves as Aryas and called their opponents as Das or Dasis. These were people who did not perform sacrifices and probably spoke different languages from the Aryas. Later, the term Das, and the feminine of it is Dasi, came to mean slave. Slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. They were treated as the property of their owners who could make them to do whatever they wanted. Means those people who were captured in the war, they were considered as slaves, and those who have captured them, they were their owners. They were treated as property of their owners who could make them whatever work they wanted. While the Rig Veda was being composed in northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments elsewhere also. Today we are going to continue next topic, that is Silent Sentinels, the story of the megaliths. See, one illustration is given here. These stone boulders are known as megaliths. Megaliths means, mega means big and liths means stone, means literally big stones. These were carefully arranged by people and were used to mark burial sites. These megaliths were carefully arranged by people and were used to mark burial sites. The practice of erecting megaliths began about 3000 years ago and was prevalent throughout the Deccan, which is in South India, in the northeast and Kashmir. Basically, in the Deccan part, in South India, in northeast and in Kashmir, practice of erecting megaliths were started. Some important megalithic sites are shown. While some of the megaliths can be seen on the surface, other megalithic burials are often underground. It depends on the situation whether it is underground or it can be on plots also. But it is a kind of burial site which erecting by the large boulders or stones. Sometimes archaeologists find a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone standing on the ground, and these are the only indication that there are burials beneath. Means if archaeologists used to find a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone somewhere, then it is indication that these are burials beneath. All these burials have some common features. Generally, the dead were buried with distinctive pots which are called black and red ware. Also found are tools and weapons of iron and sometimes skeletons of horses, horse equipments and ornaments of stone and gold, which mainly found that these all these things were belongings of that particular person who was buried there. Okay, now see the next topic, finding out about social differences. Archaeologists think that objects found with a skeleton probably belong to the dead person. Sometimes more objects are found in one grave than in another. Here one skeleton was buried with 33 gold beads, 2 stone beads and 4 copper bangles and conch shell in Brahmagiri. Other skeletons have only a few pots. These finds suggest that there was some difference in status among the people who were buried. Those who were rich, they have had a lot of things in their burials, and those who were poor, they were having some of the pots only with their dead bodies. So some were rich, others poor, some chiefs and others followers. This information we used to get from burial sites. Okay, were some burial spots meant for certain families? Were spots meant for certain families for a particular place? See, sometimes megaliths contain more than one skeleton, and these indicate that people perhaps belong to the same family were buried in the same place, though not at the same time. Obviously, not at the same time. They were all not dead at the same time. That's why the bodies of those who died later were brought into the grave through the potholes. Stone circles or boulders or megaliths placed on the surface probably served as signposts to find the burial sites, so that people could return to the same place whenever they wanted to. So these megaliths have special features also, that they used as a signpost to the burial sites, so that whenever people wanted to return to the same place, then they could be there. Now see the next topic, a spatial burial at Inamgaon. See the map. Inamgaon is a site on the river God, a tributary of the Bhim. It was occupied between 3600 and 2700 years ago. Means between of it was there. Here adults were generally buried in the ground, laid out straight with the head towards the north. Means the position of the head of the dead person is specified here. The head of the dead body should be in the north direction. Sometimes burials were within the houses. Vessels that probably contained food and water were placed with the dead body. One man was found buried in a large four-legged clay jar in the courtyard of a 5-roomed house. It is one of the largest houses at the site, and in that room, in the center of the settlement, this house also had a granary. The body was placed in a cross-legged position. Now see what skeletal studies tells us. Obviously, it is not easy to make out the skeleton of a child from its small size. However, there are no major differences in the bones of a girl and a boy. So, how can we make out whether a skeleton was that of a man or a woman? Sometimes people decide on the basis of what is found on the skeleton. For instance, if a skeleton is found with jewelry, it is sometimes thought to be that of a woman. However, there are problems with this. Often men also wore ornaments. So, a better way of figuring out the sex of a skeleton is to look at the bone structure. The hip or pelvic area of women is generally larger to enable childbearing. So these distinctions are based on modern skeletal studies also. Whenever archaeologists used to find any kind of bone or skeletal, then they used to distinct it according to their shape. About 2000 years ago, there was a famous physician named Charak who wrote a book on medicine known as Charak Samhita. There he states that the human body has 360 bones, and this is much larger number than the 200 bones that are recognized in modern anatomy. So Charak arrived at this figure by counting the teeth, joints and cartilage. He included all the small bones and everything in that, and then he counted it as 360 bones. Okay, next topic is there, occupations at Inamgaon. What type of occupations they used to serve at that time? Archaeologists have found seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas and sesame. Bones of a number of animals, many bearing cut marks that show they may have been used as food, have also been found. These include cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse and many different kinds of animals like birds were also there, crocodile, turtle, crab, fish, mongoose. So there is evidence that fruits such as amla, jamun, dates and a variety of berries were collected from it. So according to these evidence, we used to find what were the possible occupations of the people at Inamgaon. See the elsewhere topic given in a book. It is about China. Around 3500 years ago, we find some of the first evidence of writings in China. These writings were on animal bones, and these are called oracle bones because they were used to predict the future. That's why it is known as oracle bones. Kings got scribes to write. Obviously, scribes used to be there who have beautiful handwriting and who used to write everything. So the bones were put then into the fire and they cracked because of the heat. Then fortune tellers studied these cracks and tried to predict the future according to it. As you may expect, they sometimes made mistakes also. Obviously, it was not accurate all the time. These kings lived in palaces and cities. They amassed vast quantities of wealth, including large, elaborately decorated bronze vessels. And however, they did not know the use of iron at that time also. In the previous chapter, we have studied about Harappan civilization, in which they used to know the use of iron. But at that time, which we are talking about 3500 years ago, Rajas or kings were unaware of the use of the iron. Okay, now I hope you all understood the cover topics well now. If you have any kind of query, then you all can ask to me. Thank you and have a nice day.